Yeah.
Alex Vesia he was traded to Los Angeles along with Kyle Hurt for Dylan Floro, who was a big part of the Marlins bullpen in 2021. Some of us think it was a trade that, whatever, it was a normal trade. We got to give talent to give it back, to get talent, and you have to give it back. And, Alex, I want you to start with this one because I think you really regret that trade, and I can see your point for sure.
No, you guys are all right. Eli is right. Ethan is right. Isaac, you've been right in everything that you said about this particular subject. You do have to give up talent to get talent. And where the Marlins were with this trade is that they wanted to reconstruct the bullpen, not just from the closing perspective, but from the perspective of the entire thing. And they needed it for sure. And with Dylan Floro, you got back a guy who was very good. There's no getting around it. The guy was good. Had like a sub-3 ERA. He was in there like 7th, 8th inning most of the time. And most of the time he was pretty much shut down. He had his moments, but other than that, he was good. That World Series experience. You love that. He's a veteran guy. I liked him. I have no problem with the return. What I have a problem with personally is the price tag. And you have to look at, me personally, I look at it. You're dealing with the Los Angeles Dodgers, a team that's there every single year. If they're targeting Alex Vesia and Kyle Hurt, they're doing it for a reason because they know what those guys have. You're seeing what Vesia has right now. Kyle Hurt's a different story. He came out of the 2020 draft, a great draft for the Marlins that brought back the likes of what we know. And maybe Hurt was another piece. Maybe not. Maybe he was a little bit lesser. Maybe it's not really a starter ceiling. Maybe it's more of a bullpen ceiling. I can see both sides. I have to see more from him to really give you that perspective. I haven't really seen it. But the videos and stuff that I've seen from him, it's a guy that the Marlins, I don't think, should have given up on before seeing him throw a single inning. So it's a tough topic for me, man, because I do see your guys' point of view that Floro provides a service, and he definitely does. But I think Alex Vesia has shut down closer ceiling, hands down, bar none. That guy was up to 95 with the Marlins. His changeup was his best secondary pitch, and he also had a slider on top of it. You're seeing all three pitches right now. It's a good pitcher, man, and that's a guy that could close games. And if he was still here, and I brought this up to you, Isaac, if he was on the Marlins in 2021, he would have been closing games over the likes of the struggling Anthony Bass and Anthony Bender and whoever else the Marlins tried to throw out, Yimmy, everybody else that the Marlins tried to throw out there. We've talked about a bunch of these names. I mean, I think he has a big future, and I love that he plays with such passion. It's an awesome player. I really like that guy. And again, for the Dodgers to target those guys, I mean, that says a lot. I mean, that's a team that's there, and they know exactly what they're doing, and you see it happening. So it's a tough topic. Is it the worst trade in the world? No. Is it the trade that I think that the Marlins will look back on eventually and say they lost it? Absolutely. And that's my only point on it.
80 grade makeup on Alex Vesia, an awesome human being, super late draft pick out of a Division II school. It was, and he wasn't even all that effective when he was pitching in D2. It was so much fun to like follow his journey of the minor league ranks. What makes it painful now is that obviously how he's performing right now, he seems to be, it's hard to, I think there was a lot of agreement that he had this kind of potential, but there's always a question of whether you reach that potential and also when you reach that potential. The fact that he is reaching this potential in his first full major league season, it's uncommon. It's a little more common for relievers than other positions, but it's still uncommon overall. It was not something that the Marlins could have ever banked on happening. If you really want to dive into it, it hasn't even been like an amazing season. It's been an amazing half season. He was called up early in the year. He couldn't throw strikes. I checked it up. He was throwing 50% strikes in May and I believe early June. Like, it's unplayable somehow because of the qualities of his fastball, that spin rate and also that location. Like there's no tricks. He's going to throw you high fastball after high fastball after high fastball, and it's really hard to hit, and that's what makes him really special. So he was avoiding big damage early in the year, but his location was terrible. And after a quick, drop down to AAA, he fine-tuned that, and he was able to, over these last like 3.5 months, he's been much more in sync with all that. I just caution people that relievers, even the good ones, with very few exceptions, this stuff, it doesn't last on its own. He'll need to make adjustments. It's still a big question to me. He put up an ERA in the mid 2s this year. His whip was in the low 1s. Like, I think it's fair to go under the presumption that this might be the best that he ever is in the major leagues. It's not clear that he'll just continue to get better and better despite all the positives about him. Relief pitching is just that tricky. I mean, we felt another version of this with someone like Nick Anderson, where he was on top of the world in late 2019 and early 2020. And now his career's at a total crossroads because of one injury. And you never know how someone comes back from that. So the most important thing for him is going to be to stay healthy. With Vesia, the bottom line is that they felt, I think pretty accurately, that he was in this box as a reliever, that there was really no scenario where he ends up giving you more than 65, 70 innings a year in the regular season, plus more in the postseason. But if you're going to be in that small of a role, and to that point when they made the deal, he had no positive track record in the majors and very little track record whatsoever, that I thought it was a fair gamble for someone in Dylan Floro, who at the time I likened to a better version of Brandon Kinsler. They decided that they didn't want to bring back Kinsler. Floro was cheaper salary-wise. He had more control, and they felt that he was just a better version of him, that he had a similar type of sinker and changeup that tunneled off of that, and he would get that similar kind of contact. He would keep the ball in the ballpark, and they got exactly what they were expecting. He wasn't perfect, but he was exactly as advertised. Miscast in the closer's role, but still arguably their most valuable reliever over the course of the season. You know how much I love Anthony Bender, but I'd make the case that Floro was the number one reliever they had from start to finish overall. And that's not for nothing, even though ultimately it didn't make the difference. I mean, the good news is that they still have club control over Floro for 2 more years, which is why I'll be very curious to revisit this in a couple of years. And maybe by then I'll be where you are, like seeing this as a clear loss for the Marlins at the time, and like a mistake. But I'm not there yet. It's a fascinating one though. It is definitely, who was it? I think it was just Kevin Barral that like very flatly said, it was good for both sides. It was a win-win. And I think as simplified as that is, I think it worked out well so far, even though the jury is still out on how this plays out the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, with this trade and like most trades, you're trading 2 guys who you hope will be, as established as Dylan Floro. So I think that's just, you're trading the gamble. And I think the only situation where this trade really hurts, no pun intended, is if it hurt, like really, becomes something. I think that's when it maybe stings a little bit. Daniel, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I'm kind of with Eli. Like, I kind of see it as a win-win. I mean, Dylan Floro played pretty great. I don't say great, but he played good for the Marlins. And seeing what Alex Vesia is doing, I mean, that part kind of hurts. Like, I kind of want to see what when eventually he's a free agent, what his market value will be in the open market. Like, do you see him as someone that can get maybe a big contract, maybe around $4 million, or is he always going to be someone that's probably around the $1 million range, or just getting maybe a minor league deal or something like that?
Yeah, it's a doozy, this trade. And hey, I think Eli said it best, that in a couple of years we'll have a much better picture on who are the winners and who are the losers on this trade.
Yeah, I mean, just to finish off, because we saw that one tweet with Hurt showing his stuff, and it had the metrics about his spin rate and his stuff. And Alex goes, I think that set you off, Alex, just seeing like one tweet like highlighting what he'd done. Early in the season, Hurt was doing nothing. He was on the IL in the minors for most of the year, and then he was struggling initially, and we didn't pay any attention to it. And then it's like, oh, it's coming together. So, yeah, it's step by step. Even, a month from now after the Arizona Fall League, because that's where Hurt is in the Fall League, right? So a few more outings over there. If he's nasty every single time, then maybe we get a little bit worried. At this particular moment, the jury is still out.
It's not just that. It wasn't really just that. I mean, yes, that added to my frustration for sure. But no, I mean, I saw Vesia coming up, man, and like I said, I saw the velo already up to 95, and like you said, this is a late round pick, and I understand it from the business side. The Marlins did not have a lot invested in Alex Vesia as an 18th round pick, nowhere college pretty much. I think JUCO, and I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I mean, there's not a lot invested in him, but I mean, just from the standpoint of what he did in the minors with his 30 innings scoreless streak between the minors and spring training. I mean, he was showing good. Velo was already good. I thought his changeup was already good, really, really good. He said himself that he thinks that's his best pitch. So I'm not trying to drag it out, but I mean, if Hurt's performing on top of that, and Kyle Hurt was hurt in the physical sense for most of the minor league season. So I mean, if Kyle Hurt turns into something, it's a definite loss. I think it will eventually be a definite loss. in the long term. In the short term, you guys are right. You know, Floro provided a service, and if he's here for the next 2 years out of the middle of the bullpen, that's great. So, I mean, it's not, like, again, not the worst trade ever, but it does hurt a little bit for me personally.
You know, something I was going to mention, Alex, is that if the Marlins did make the postseason and Floro was saving games or, you know, pitching high leverage situation innings for the Marlins in a National League Division Series, would you have a different take on this? I don't even think we'd be considering it a loss in the future or now.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go through a lot of hypotheticals to get to that situation, but you know, again, I personally like Dylan Floro. I think he's a good pitcher. I think he's actually really good. I don't think he is a bona fide closer. I think he got forced into that role because of all of the struggles the Marlins had in that role throughout the course of the season. I think personally, and Eli and you guys can all disagree with me, that Vesia has much closer to that ceiling than Dylan Floro will ever have. And that's an opinion, and you guys can agree or disagree with me. But, I mean, honestly, I see a lot in that guy, and I think that, you know, the Marlins got him for not a big signing bonus. It's a guy that they could have turned into that classic Marlins guy that they pluck out of nowhere and turn into a star. And they've done it before, albeit to trade a lot of them away. But, you know, they've done it before. And I definitely think that was a guy that could have provided a lot more in terms of, you know, the higher leverage ceiling out of the bullpen than Dylan Floro, even though I'm not knocking Dylan Floro. I do like him, and I hope he sticks around these next 2 years because I think he's good. But again, it hurts a little bit for me.
What I'll admit to is there were moments during the season I never actually put my thoughts out there completely about just the stylistic differences and the fact that Vesia misses bats, and when he hits bats, it's mostly like pop-ups. And Floro, he allows ground balls and soft line drives, some stuff that you can control with a good defense, and other stuff that, you know, over time is going to come back and bite you. And one of those moments that people most remember, they blame it on Jorge Alfaro, that walk-off against the Mets when the Marlins blew, a 5-1 lead in the ninth inning. And ultimately, the ball was hit to Jorge Alfaro in left field, and he was the one that misplayed it and ended up leading to the winning run. The pitcher on the mound at that time was Floro, and he allowed, I think, a couple hits in that inning, just needing one more out to get out of it. He was throwing quality pitches and they were getting fouled off, and eventually he got the soft contact he wanted, but it went to the wrong spot and it made it through. And those are the things that separate a shutdown closer from somebody like Floro. He does have that ceiling where he's not going to totally shut you down because he doesn't get much out of his breaking ball, and he's not going to miss bats a ton. So because of that, that's why the Marlins as a team, just to spin this forward, that's something that should be a priority this offseason, to get more guys with that whiff ability. That Bender has a lot of it, but even somebody hopefully that's more established than that. Those are the guys worth investing in, either via trade or with a significant free agent deal, the ones that miss bats in a variety of ways. It makes them because those are the ones you need to trust in the most important situations. Floro can be trusted in a lot of situations. If he's the closer of the team next year, I could make a prediction without any other information that they'll probably have a losing record if he's the guy that's their closer from start to finish next year. You need to aim a little higher.
Yeah.